The biggest mistake that the world allowed to let Hamas come to power, and the fact that they legitimized Hamas as a resistance movement. That's a big difference between a terrorist group, when Hamas was just a bunch of people working in the dark as a terrorist organization, underground organization, and when they came to power.
But it's in their hearts. Can these ambitions be eradicated?
I think we can eradicate it for the next 50 years, for the next 100 years. Now we had to use the lethal force in order to achieve this goal. Remember the Nazis, they had ambition to dominate the globe. They invaded Europe and they were about to control the continent. And the alliance bombed them. 8 million people died, more. And the Nazi idea or the Nazi ideology ended up in the head of a dead man. So, and for about 80 or 90 years, Nazis had to disappear. Now we have a new movement of the Nazis that they claim to be Palestinians. Very, very similar scenario. So I don't know how long it's going to take and how many people are going to die before they realize that the Palestinian ideology, or let's say Palestinianism, regardless if it's Islamic or communist, or even today is coming by the name of morality even, which is worse. It doesn't matter. Eventually the people need to understand it's a dead end, and Gaza is just the model. Gaza is the model, and we are trying to communicate with the world. Don't repeat Gaza model elsewhere.
Now, when we discuss the humanitarian aid, the humanitarian crisis, what does Hamas want? Is it even maybe good for them that there's hunger, that there's starvation? What happens when the aid doesn't come in?
Oh, Israel brings the aid to the community. The problem, Hamas gets in the way. Hamas wants to take the aid because this is how they pay their members. Using international aid, they pay them with rice and food, not money. They make sure that their terrorists are well fed, and it's in their interest to starve the non-Hamas Gazans, because now on one hand they stay strong and they have the lifeline, and on the other hand they sacrifice those who are not Hamas in Gaza, so to gain global sympathy. Let's not forget that Hamas weaponized civilians from the beginning of the war, in the previous wars, and in fact, if you study throughout the Palestinian history, you find that sacrificing civilians has been a strategy not only adapted by Hamas, but also by the various Palestinian militias.
Now, you know, some see the protests and said that's a problem. We should pretend as if we don't care. Strategically speaking, tactically speaking, that'll be better. To pretend as if we don't care about the hostages.
No, I don't think this is the right approach, not in a democratic system, which makes Israel different than the surrounding countries. It's something to be actually proud of. But I have a problem when people start accusing the government of committing genocide in Gaza, or of deliberately killing the hostages or abandoning the hostages. This is not true. And they don't have the evidence that support their claims. So, and many people are also anti-establishment. Even they have been anti-establishment. They were known figures before the war in Gaza, and today they are using the war in Gaza to continue their anti-government or anti-establishment activity. So I don't think that this is honest, but this is part of democracy, that many people could be delusional people who take advantage, opportunists who take advantage, corrupt politicians or compromised politicians who take advantage. And it's very hard, you know, to tell who is and what actually motivates the people. Do we have people who are ill-motivated among the mob or among the crowd, the protest? Yes, there are. The consequences of defeat because if this government or any other government declare defeat and surrender to Hamas demands, and God forbids Hamas stays in power after this 2 years of deadly fight, and after getting all this global campaign against Israel, then the consequences of defeat will be deadly, because this will ignite the bloodlust everywhere. And the world would expect from Israel not only surrender, but also apology, to surrender to the global pressure, which means I cannot satisfy. Like, even if I can satisfy, let's say, the Arabs in Judea and Samaria or in the West Bank, but then how can I satisfy all the governments that infiltrated by Muslims that basically calling for the annihilation of the Jewish people? I would be risking the lives of the Israelis, and I would be risking, most importantly, the lives of the Jewish people worldwide. If I was the leader, I would never accept surrender to the terrorists. So this is the dilemma that we like. Okay, everybody wants the war to end, but on what term? Do we want it to end as and be victorious, or do we want it to end and be completely defeated?
Do you agree to the claim that when Hamas sees these protests, they're motivated?
Of course, this is what's given them a lifeline. In fact, when they see the division within the Israeli society, why do you think they put all this propaganda out there? Their aim is to divide the Israeli society in the midst of war, force the Israeli government to resign or collapse, and then we are going to go now inside roads, getting busy in the political arena, and forget about the main mission, where it's like our army cannot go in this war forever. So it's like, this is we are not that far from the goal, and God's willing, the hostages will be returned. And in the worst case scenario, if God forbids the hostages will be harmed, we will not be the first democracy attacked by savages or by terrorists who took hostages. Nobody can guarantee, no government can guarantee the release of all the hostages in such scenario. Mm-hmm. So what we are dealing with, no one has that kind of assurance. So if they don't have it, then how can I go pressure them? I understand the global pressure. They want Israel to surrender. Like Macron, all these Western leaders, I think it's given them some pleasure to see Israel in trouble and to see the Israeli politicians stumbling in this dark situation. They love it. And to basically just agree with them, I don't like it. We need to understand, our, and I mean our, because I am part of this entire thing. Our soldiers, foot soldiers in Gaza, they are risking their lives. The last thing I want from some strange people here in Israel, I don't understand where they stand morally to call the IDF committing genocide, while they're risking their lives on a regular basis. All the attack we have been facing on a global level, being accused of genocide, and people meet me in the street and say, you are a genocidal child killer, yelling at us, and we take it, it's okay. But to be in Israel and I hear people saying genocide in Israel, this is not acceptable. Not acceptable.
When you look back at your awakening back then, when you understood what was happening and decided to leave Hamas, how surprised were you now when you saw the pictures from October 7th?
You say awakening. I'm not sure that I'm awake. It's such a crazy state that we are in, but it is what it is. I've seen bad pictures during the second Intifada, the suicide bombing attacks, more than 100 attacks that happened. The suicide bombing scenes, they were not less barbaric. But what's happening in Gaza is not only killing people. There were so many war crimes committed by Hamas on October 7. And each case each individual on that day represents a certain war crime, not committed only by terrorists. This is what the world don't understand, that many of what so-called Gaza civilians projected their barbarism in that moment when they had the opportunity. Because in general, it's a barbaric society. And in general, actually, all those who claim to be Palestinians, in my humble opinion, they agree with barbarism. They see it as a resistance. Because also they agreed with the suicide bombing attacks. And why do you think they want me dead? They want me dead because I opposed their barbarism back in the day. And today we are in the same situation, in the same game, where this all of a sudden became resistance. And people, of course, the average person everywhere, they think the issue is measured by the head count. They say, okay, 1,200 people died on October 7, but 50,000 people died in Gaza, even though the numbers are not accurate. And sooner or later, their lies are going to be revealed, because they exaggerated the numbers. They lied about statistics, and the only source was coming from Hamas death ministry. So a genocide is not measured by the head count, and war crimes, a lot more war crimes were committed on October 7, because in Gaza, if there is a war crime, there is only one war crime, in my opinion, and that is the use of human shields, and Hamas is responsible for that crime. But October 7, there was raping, there was kidnapping, there was beheading, they cut people's organs. At some point, somebody killed a Jew and ate his liver. Those pictures are not available to the public, and I don't think Israel will reveal it to the public, but those who argue and want to challenge me, I want to take them from the head and stick their head into the scene so they can see what was happening on October 7. This type of vengeance based on tribalism, coming from Arabian 7th century mentality, was totally projected on October 7. Absolute barbarism, and the world is in denial in it. This is beyond anyone's imagination. By the way, October 7 was not the only thing. We saw it in the Druze situation, and the world is in denial. This is the common culture, the death culture.
Now, regarding this culture, what are your memories from back then?
Yeah, well, it's for me, I had a choice to be a barbarian, and since childhood, I did not like that. I did not like their violence. But of course, I was totally dependent on their system and the security that it gave me. Most people get stuck in this system because they're afraid to be labeled as traitors, or they're afraid to lose their security, the little that they get in return. Not everybody has that kind of sense. I grew up in a good family, and violence was not accepted against the Muslims.
In the family.
Against the Muslims was not accepted. So why violence is not accepted against the Muslims, but against the non-Muslims was okay. So there were so many things that I needed to ask myself about, and I reject that, knowing what I am going to have to be dealing with. And look, today, my position is not very pleasant worldwide. In fact, now I'm returning to Israel because there are not many places left safe where I can actually even fit or coexist. So this is something I didn't do in the last 15 years. I could have returned to Israel some 10 years ago. But now I feel like I had no other choice. I ran out of options. This is very, very scary.
So you feel safer here, as geographically speaking, you're much closer to Hamas, to the enemy?
Look, it's when I talk about safety, I am not talking about only being physically safe. That's something if I wanted, I can go in a hideout for a very long time, but I don't want to hide. I'm talking about the possibility to coexist in any social structure, now as, let's say, anti-Palestinian narrative. I don't want to say even pro-Israel, because I never represent myself as pro-Israel. I'm totally anti-Palestinian victim narrative. This is where I stand. And today, to be anti-Palestine, you are not welcome. It takes just a few days for anybody to recognize who you are and what you're doing. Then ask me, how can you live in a society like this? And that doesn't mean necessarily that they're going to kill you or torture you, but you're immediately canceled. And I think the Jewish people worldwide, they start feeling that, the heat and the impact of the spread of the Palestinian propaganda, because now it's taking place and becoming true. This is the world that we are dealing with. Unfortunately, I can experience it firsthand and fast, because people can recognize my face everywhere I go. The Jews around the world, they can hide their Jewish symbols and you can get along for a while, but eventually they're going to know that you're Jewish. And how can you coexist in any society if Jewish hatred is legitimized and is becoming a virtue? So sooner or later, millions of Jews around the world are going to also come to the same realization. And I don't want to say, why you invest in your money and your Jewish brain somewhere else? Why don't you bring it here, back home? Bring your intelligence, bring your resources, bring everything here. Let's invest in this country all together. And going back to the protests, and this is as someone who's insider, outsider, at the same time, someone who has traveled the world since the beginning of the war. We need unity. Yes, I understand the diversity. It's a diversity, but unity in this situation is priority. It's priority because the enemy, and that's not only Hamas, the global enemy now, and all those who want to see Israel not only defeated, but humiliated before defeat, are counting on one thing: the division. So we must understand this dynamic.
And this is exactly what they identified before October 7th.
Of course, because they knew that all the protests, the anti-government protests, they could see that the Israeli street is divided. And this is why they choose that time. And this is why they took the hostages. And this is why they use their own people as human shields, knowing that the world is going to condemn Israel. And Israel would fail to do a ground operation that would reach the eradication of Hamas. Hamas had so many layers, unusual methods to protect itself and survive. And we see how complicated the situation is. So at least for us, we need to understand this dynamic, at least for us who are very close to the situation. The ones outside who don't understand it, that we have to explain to them history, we have to educate them about the culture, we have to show them the religious and the ideological dimension of the fight. This takes time, and I understand that people cannot see the bigger picture. But people here, this is something I really cannot understand.
Now, I see you in TV studios around the world. It seems that they don't understand at all.
Many of them are driven by hatred. Many of them also driven by very strong emotions, by ignorance. Some of them are ill-motivated. Some of them are opportunists. Some of them are playing the devil game to achieve their selfish interests. So we cannot generalize, say all of them, because some people also don't want to see bloodshed. And I think the vast majority, when they see things on social media, this is the first time a war zone been broadcast to the entire world live. And not to forget how much they lie about such things. So the average person don't want to see bloodshed. And of course, when they see defenseless civilians, they cannot make the connection that this is a death culture where sacrificing civilians is a strategy for political and financial gain. And it has been like this for 70 years, by the way. In the previous 5 wars with Israel, Hamas had a taste of the blood, which gave them, which ignited their bloodlust even more, because they were paid, they were recognized, they were legitimized after the previous wars. And when terrorism get rewarded, then they go in a direction how we're going to double down on the next campaign. And this is what they did. They tripled down on taking hostages and on kidnapping, on attacking civilians. And those who are in denial that this has been Hamas strategy, knowing that the destruction of Gaza and the death of so many civilians will lead to global sympathy, and most importantly would lead to delegitimizing Israel. But eventually, if we decide as a human race to go full mode self-destruction and repeat the Gaza model in Europe, in the United States, everywhere, by bringing sick indoctrination, that is a very dangerous threat to the fabric of any society the moment we welcome them in. Then if we want to go to that point, guess what? Earth is superior. We are capable only of destroying ourselves. And if we have to go down to the blueprint or to the first man, Adam and Eve, life will go on. So I ask myself, why do we want to go that route? We already seen it. We saw it it has been going on for so long. And now the world, instead of recognizing the threat and getting united to counter it, we got divided. So, okay, in my opinion, this country is the safest country on the world. It's the strongest country with the strongest intelligence, strongest army. Maybe we don't have the resources of superpowers, but we are a superpower. And in case of a chaos, when shit hit the fan up there, this is a very independent country. In food, we don't depend on the chain supply very, very much. We can adjust very quickly. The Jewish people will not eat Jewish people for survival. But I cannot say the same about pretty much any other nation that right now want to come and teach us morality. If they lose control, it's going to be chaos. It's going to be chaos, and it's a free fall. So if you tell me about hope, Israel is the hope. Israel is the blueprint, and rejecting the blueprint. You know, we're talking about approximately 5,000 years of civilization, of survival, of contribution to life. All the knowledge and intelligence that the Jewish people developed throughout the centuries. By rejecting that, it looks like we are rejecting a very, very important, it's like a foundation, a pillar. I don't want to say the foundation. Let's be modest, say it's like a pillar of the human evolution. So take down that pillar, and you are risking to collapse the entire structure. So now, if the world don't want to see this, then this is their problem. We have to carry on. And this maybe, you asked me about hope. This is not about hope. It's about truth.
It's 2025. America's debt is over $37 trillion, and the dollar just had its worst crash since 1973. That puts your savings and your family's future at risk. That's why we trust Alpha Omega Gold, a company that stands unapologetically with Israel and supports Stand Tall Israel. Visit ao.gold/stand to claim your free precious metals wayfinder guide, or call 1-855-426-4653 today. Protect your future before it's too late.